Well, good morning as we're sitting here um, on Sunday morning, January 14th, year 2024, here with the Yellow Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty and Francis Ann, and of course, huge followers and partners to the vision of creating the concept of public access to come to life here at the east end of Long Island. And of course, all of you out there that make it your business to enhance and fortify this concept and give it a little bit of that which it needs in order to materialize and ferment and and ensure its vitality, to say that for lack of a better word. Um, I'm very happy to be here. I'm actually, there is a memorial for Fraser Dougherty here today. I came an hour earlier, so I said to myself, you know what? The most natural thing for me is to sit here and do a show and externalize my thoughts and share and bring about to the surface reflections, as if I haven't done that enough in the last 27 years here. But yeah, I thought to myself that there's much to be said about a concept that serves as a leader that takes us from point A to point B, and sometimes gives us enough time to reflect while the ongoing ordeals are taking place, and gives us a respite to uh, to perform outside of ourselves. And when I say outside of ourselves, means that we can actually snap out of ourselves in order to see ourselves performing and functioning. Mentioned a lot in the past, me, myself, and me, you, yourself, and you, and the kind of the play of words. But in reality, it actually, you know what? Let me just see something. I don't know if this is working here. Let's see if this is working. This is working. Yeah. Well, maybe I should put this on. If you give me a minute, I'm going to adjust things here. Okay. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. This is actually, wow. So, yeah. Uh, Speaking of to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I always say that because I envision more that actually the end of the tunnel is working its way towards us and gives us a signal that maybe we've done enough work, and we're entitled to get a little break where the results of our actions and our investment of time and goodwill is leading us to a situation where the actual stage itself is working its way towards us. And really, in the world of creations, in the world of creativity, in the world of art, it's all about preserving time and energy because there's so much to be done and so little time to do something about it. So, myself as an artist with multiple mediums, and as I react and interact with the other artists, because I'm concerned about many things, and I feel like obligated to be in touch with functioning, creative, engaged individuals that make it their business really to. Because you have to agree with me, 90% of the artists around the world, they really create for themselves. They hardly show their work. They still, nevertheless, go about it, invest their time put the effort in place and believe in the heart of hearts that actually their actions matter. And it's all about the psyche and the energy in the air and the energy that's being carried from one point to another, and the voyage um, of that energy carried into. Once you release it, obviously you don't know where it's going to end up and where it's going to, which kind of delicacy will handle it as it reaches a destination. And I realized that most artists really don't really spend too much time thinking which hands are going to handle that which they were sending forth, because they know that the nature of that energy is going to create in the reality of the receiver something that really spells nothing but goodness. And it's so appealing to know that you're, in the scheme of things, you're like an influencer, a figure and entity that's actually making a difference on the surface, and making um, I don't even know how to say it. It's making a difference in the sense of enlightening people out there to help them realize the things that they really want to find themselves engaged in, and like some kind of an awakening. The world needs that so much. It's not even funny. I mean, you think about it. You take all the, and people forget that in the old times, man, people used to fight. They used to create a lot of battlefields, and if you speak of 100 or 200 or 300 or 400,000 people getting killed in a battlefield, this is not smart bombs or automatic weapons and missiles or whatever. This is hands-on, face-to-face swords and whatnot. Terrible. And the battlefield was literally infested with blood. When they said rivers of blood, they really meant rivers of blood. I mean, if you have 400,000 casualties bleeding, it's like I don't even want to think about it. So the level of evil, even if an indirect, even if you're the one who's defending yourself because someone else started a war and wanted to kill you, you're still going to have to engage. I'm speaking of the old times. You still would have had to engage in a war where you would have to use the same weapons they're using, and if you have swords and all that, then you would be the one in the battlefield. If there's a drone above, the drone won't be able to tell who's the good guys, who the bad guys. These people kind of slaughtering each other. So a lot of creative artists at any age group out there, that even most of them never get to show their work, to display their work, just by way of feeling and putting time, 1 hour or 12 hours, daily or weekly. They know how much it means when it comes to the result being materialized by way of somehow finding itself in the hands of the other. So it's almost like, when you see someone walking that shows signs of distress and maybe poverty and maybe, harsh times, maybe hunger, maybe, we see creatures that are just kind of people that look like creatures with some kind of carts, pushing carts into from one void to another void, and and you realize that even if you want to approach a person like this and say, and even if you want to approach a person like this to help, to give that person $50, for example, because you have a feeling that he can use these $50 and will go long ways for him or her. Well, then you have to really apologize ahead of time and ask for permission in order to do the right things on more than just one front. You have to kind of ask for permission as you're actually apologizing to for that person to allow you to help him. I did that a few times. I remember I can tell you a story. It was in Jerusalem, late afternoon on Friday, as the Sabbath is kind of introducing itself. And in Jerusalem, let me remind you, the Sabbath is absolutely holy and wonderful and quiet and inspirational. At least it used to be like that more 30 years ago. And I was in one of my vacations in Jerusalem for a couple of months. So I rented an apartment in one of the valleys there. It was awesome. So I was actually driving my car, rented a rented car, and then I saw a blind person hitchhiking, and I stopped immediately because I thought that maybe I'm just hallucinating. So I stopped and I approached the guy and I said, "What are you hitchhiking?" Or is it? He said, "Yes, I'm hitchhiking." I said, "Where do you need to go?" And then he mentioned whatever destination, and I was really, 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 really in a hurry. Really, like and you know, if you want to do a good deed, you really don't want to look for excuses. But sometimes you just cannot do that which is required of you at that particular moment. So I said, "Listen, I cannot take you myself, but I'm going to stand here with you until a taxi will pass because in Jerusalem, there are taxis everywhere, like Manhattan. And the probability that one taxi will pass on a Friday, early evening, late afternoon was not so great." And he said, "No, no, no, it's going to cost you a lot of money." I said, "No, no, please, please, please allow me to do that." So anyway, a taxi goes by, and I and and I approach the taxi driver and I tell him the story about this blind man, and he's like, he just couldn't believe it. Anyway, I arranged for him how much it's going to cost. I paid him the money, and I showed that person in. So there is this moment could not have happened unless I was to ask the permission of the person that I wanted to help for me to allow me to help. So you don't like really trying to do a good thing and then end up hurting someone's feelings like, I don't need your help, or what makes you assume that this is just a given that you can just come and show off here, or things like that anyway. But the bottom line of performing goodness and performing that which will lead to goodness and that which will inevitably will be a part of that positive energy and aspect that that can never change its nature. It can only enhance its nature. It can only have its nature being enhanced and being fortified and being boosted. And you know, and you keep on doing the same thing over and over again. So when I go to visit artists here at the east end of Long Island, thank God we have enough, a huge community of artists, thank God. And so even when I go to visit my friends, because I want to know the nature of their energy, the nature of their achievements, the nature of their progress, the nature of the process that's taking place for them to create, to compare with myself, to be impressed, to be aware that that which I engage myself in is something that exists all over the place. But especially learn about its nature that I already know about its nature, but just learn about its nature because from visit to visit, you realize that you're learning that people advance and people progress and people have that mindset that is widening and beefing up. And there's nothing greater for you to visit an artist, a fellow artist, and then chat and converse about things that you know that you cannot do it with anyone else, really. And I'm talking about those individuals that are kind of hands-on people. That it doesn't matter how much time of the day they spend in their studios, but every day they're there. They're very mindful of the requirements that of what it really takes to have that kind of lifestyle. And most of all, even though in my case, for example, I wouldn't let many people, if at all, even if someone wants to buy art from me, which doesn't happen that often, I must admit. I'm probably the only famous, supposedly, artist that you would know about that really doesn't sell much work at all. Even though if you were to observe me from the outside, you would think that I'm, successful and I sell and, by the thousands and hundreds and thousands, whatever. No, it doesn't work this way. But it's also something that speaks the language that is pretty much known only to you. I mean, if other people will encounter this language, they will maybe get a slight idea of what's taking place or not. But you is just a revelation of a whole world. And this world is a parallel to the existing world. I mean, speaking of the existing world that you have to offer to the moment that is aware of your investment of time and goodwill and that willingness to cope with the desire, because we're full of desires. They come and go, for the most part. Throughout the world, with most people, these desires come and go, come and go. They come as they become, and they go as they dissipate. And it's like most of them, if not all of them, almost don't see the light of day in terms of being utilized and materialized, and then accomplishing its purpose of existence, purpose of just becoming, almost like the ongoingness of something out of nothing, something out of nothing, something out of nothing, something, that kind of ongoingness that creates this huge animal to become civil and appealing and accessible and approachable. And um, and yeah, so you assume that role of conductor. But as realizing and acknowledging the vitality of that willingness to cope with the desires that usually come and go. They come from everything and fullness into nothingness. So the exit as air, unnoticeable. Nobody would even know. But once you uh, begin to create your awareness and realize that you need to cope with that desire that comes your way, and then what happens? It stalls and it spends time with you. So the more time you showing that you're willing to cope, the willingness to cope, that means to bear the burden, because it is a burden, just because it's a good thing by nature, it doesn't mean that it's not a burden, because it's there. You're seeing responsibility, you need to give the time, and the attention and whatnot. And it's, even if it's 1 hour or 10 days, it's got to be consistent. You can't just like take your eyes off the ball. So once you show that willingness to cope, the desire itself is unfolding. It's magic. I can tell you, I can reveal to you that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what time of the year, no matter what state of mind, if you were to feel that something creative is approaching you, and you say in your heart of hearts that you're willing, or show or externalize that feeling of willingness to cope with it, that means I'm allowing you to come to me. I'm allowing you to pause and rest and reside within me. And for that duration, I will give you nothing but that willingness to cope with your presence. And then the desire itself is performing on its own behalf, independently, individually, intimately. It's unbelievable. If you do it often enough, you would realize that there's a reservoir of savings. Like it's like putting a quarter every day, or $1 or $5 every day aside in the bucket, and then you realize that after that many months, or a year or a couple of years, and you realize that bucket is full, and that bucket has a couple of thousands there, and a couple of thousands there spells a lot of freedom, especially for a person like you that doesn't have much money. So you translate your savings into the amount of freedom that you gained by having these savings. And then you realize the magic of it, that it was accumulated on without really being aware, directly aware that that's what you're doing, but your direct awareness was of the nature of the reason of why you were doing what you were doing, and that's coping. But that coping that helps selflessness to thrive. It's unbelievable. I share with you, I'm not a master of anything. I'm not an authority of anything really in particular. But I can tell you that when it comes to creating a mindset, an attitude, by utilizing head games in order to fortify and to ensure the presence of those attitudes when you need them, if you need them, as much as you need them, that I'm a master of. And of course, I mean, if you were to think about it, what is there to be a master in order to have like a head game or an attitude, certain attitude in place? Well, it's just as hard, as difficult as anything else that you want to achieve. Even if you just want to tell yourself at certain moments when certain things happen, stop. Most of the times you won't even know what it means. Even if you were to hear yourself saying to yourself, stop now, and that stop can mean don't move anymore, keep quiet, calm down, relax your thoughts, reduce your tension. I can inform you that this is probably will be the most difficult thing in your life to do and to achieve even more difficult. It's called like, I don't know, maybe wishful thinking. Yeah, wishful thinking is something good actually, more often than not, because it leads you somewhere, especially if you have that willingness in place, especially if you have the what is required of you in terms of coping, meaning that you can take that much, just the right amount of punishment, and, and increasing your tolerance of pain. Therefore, and so there's this, but to be able to say to yourself now and then, stop. Not as easy as you think. And even if you were to say stop, then you have to understand what is it that just happened? What is it that you are hoping that would have happened or will happen by you saying, okay, wait a second. So you know it's going to take you somewhere. And you know that you might not be able to figure out where it is it that it's going to take you. And what is the nature, the character, the personality behind it that governs it, and what is it? What am I trying to achieve, and what is it that I'm getting out of it in terms of a, a plan in the background that whatever it is that I do in the present feeds it and forms it to become something more vivid and defined, so that background is actually the essence of the subject matter, even though it lingers. And you want to keep it lingering as long as possible, if not forever, if you're lucky enough. And how does it? So let's say, okay, I can talk forever about that, and you know that I can. If you know me out there, you know that I can. So this nothingness is actually very meaningful. You know that if I can put the attitude in place as I usually do naturally and automatically, it will feed the substance that leads the subject matter that leads to forming a defined journey tracks pattern that at least will be helpful for you, that you don't have to kind of take the wrong turns and the U-turns and coming back and catching up again, which you would face a lot when you first don't know that there actually can be a plan to prevent you from, more often than not end up in scenarios where it will rob you from an energy, or energy that is unreplenishable. And about that, I can talk to you also for an hour alone about why is it and how come is it that when usually an energy, when it goes away, it's unreplenishable. So that means you must understand that you have the quota, the amount, the reserves of that quantity of energy for each scenario that represents and being represented on behalf of certain energy for life. So that means that's why people are reaching certain age, usually very early, and then become melancholy and depressed and upset and moody, and that's why they need their help, and that's why they, even if they get the help, the best help, they're getting really nowhere. They're getting really nowhere because they cannot replenish the energy, cover that void, even though it's treatable if you would create, if you create that awareness. There's actually this energy that you wasted or spent or used maybe excessively is not that which you should aim for, but rather a substitute. There are substitutes that can keep you afloat, not on the same level of vitality than as if when you have the energy at your disposal available, but still will keep you afloat, and you don't have to find yourself prematurely drowning. Lucky for me, even though at a late age, but still in the early stages of the game, I realized, even though I was pretty advanced with my age then, and when it comes to art, age 30 is advanced. If you're starting at age 30, or especially 35, 40, that's like, whoa. But usually by age 30, you should know who you are, where you're going, where you're coming from. What's your style? What's your this? What's your aim? What's your plans? What's your inspiration? What is it that governs this? What is the influence that? What is it that makes you feel that? What is it that helps you? What is it that derails you? What is it that uplifts you? What is it that takes you? Everything. You should know already by then what plans you have, what tools you have, what tricks you have, in order to keep you going, in order to kind of, okay, I don't have to be on top of the mountain always, but afloat above the water. I don't want to drown here. Don't want to drown. So easy to find yourself in exposed to the potential avalanche, even the avalanche of goodness. It will bury you alive. Once that happens, your chances of survival are probably less than zero. Your faith is sealed, and it's the most philosophical, spiritual, emotional, and so much more death that you will ever experience or hope for or not hope for or will encounter, whether it's yours or somebody else's. It's doomsday scenario, and that's it. It's like the animal, the wild animal is chewing your life away while you're still alive to witness it. You won't even feel the pain because you're so terrified that will numb the pain. I'm sorry that I have to use this analogy or metaphor, whatever. But when you know that goodness won't spare you from the technical aspects of its configuration, so to speak. If that avalanche of whatever it is dumps its weight on you, even with all the good intentions in the world, it's still a huge amount of weight that will crush you and will put an end to your miserable life. Or maybe happy life, or maybe whatever, but put an end to your life, that's for sure. So then, vis-a-vis the medium that you're engaged on, creative medium that you're engaged on, you realize that actually there's a defense mechanism. There's a defense mechanism that can even help that avalanche by deterring it from choosing you as the target. Even though you say, how can an avalanche choose a victim, potential victim, or whatever? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. And you're right, it doesn't make sense. But if you were to take a deep breath and hold your breath long enough, longer than you think you can, then you will be enlightened and realize that the avalanche is there seeking you as the target of that act to come, not knowing that by doing so, it will put an end to your life. It's just like when you think of blood clots that cause a heart attack. Usually, most people that, God forbid, that experience heart attacks, and let's say in the artery right next to the heart, there's a blood clog, and of course, and then there's a blockage and heart attack active. And if you're lucky, if God loves you 1,000 times over, and you get the right help, the right time, fast enough, this, that, they will save you. and they will save you. In 90% of the cases, you would be disabled to a certain degree noticeably afterwards, and only 10% will be okay, nothing major happened, you experienced it, this is what happened to you, and all this. But most of the doctors will tell you your blockage was only like 30%, and it erupted. And when it erupts, the body is doing what it's supposed to do to save your life, and by doing so, it's actually killing you. What it does, it creates, because the body gets, and if your mind gets a notice that there's a bleeding, there's an area that's bleeding, there's like in a kind of, so it wants to immediately create a blood clot to stop the bleeding, and then therefore it's creating 100% blockage. So uh, this is what I mean, that actually you are the subject, you're the victim and the fatality on the behalf of your body and your own mind trying to do the right thing by you. But it doesn't have a mind of its own to think, wait, what am I doing? If I'm going to do this, then that's going to happen. If I won't do this, then that's going to happen. The mind can't contemplate. The mind is programmed to do certain things according to what's really happening in the surface. The nature of it cannot be a factor that can influence the mind to do something or not to do something, to do more of it, less of it, to stall it, to make it happen faster, whatever it is. So you want to be able to participate in that which take place in the moment of truth and bring it to life as a declaration that the coast for evil is not clear. Evil doesn't get a clearance. Evil doesn't get okay, you're good to go. There's some issues, and even evil cannot overcome the obstacles, because evil is counting on the fact that the runway is vacant. They're already manning the airplane, but the runway is not vacant, and so it doesn't matter what is the nature of evil. It doesn't matter at all what is the capability of evil. One thing is known, at least I know in my mind, that they need a clear runway. They need a clear runway. They have no ability to clear the obstacles while they're trying to lift off, to take off. This knowledge in itself, this knowledge alone, gives you a window of opportunity to learn. And the beauty of it is what that which you learn in the moment can serve you a second later. It's all like how is the attitude, your own attitude, how is it coming to play? How is it? What language is it speaking? What language is it speaking? And the language that it's speaking, what is the nature of that language it's speaking? What is the level of the understanding of that entity that's learning this language? What kind of implications? That means, and why is it that you're actually learning this language? And while you're learning it, and you can do very well, and you can really get the hang of it fast enough, but you cannot, and you usually don't stop asking these questions. Most people would brush it off because they just want to get it over with, because they know that they're doing it because they want to advance themselves in this and that, and that's going to help and all this. But there's some people who don't. They want to achieve 3 different kind of level of enlightenments from that one process, so they don't have to go back. They don't have to go back, which will require energy, certain energy, and any kind of energy, as I said before. If you use it, you got to use it because you're almost like desperate. and you must do that which you need to do at that particular moment, and therefore you use your reservoir. You pull a $100 bill from that bucket that you were like spending saving money. It will be painful. I mean, you're saving, and now you have to pull a $100 bill. It's big, but at least you know where you're coming from. You know where you're going to, but most importantly, you know where you are at any given time in the relationship between where you are to where you're coming from and where you are towards where you're going to. It's saying things like that. Again, a lot of it can be cliche and trivial and all this, but you must also learn to accept that in your life and to give yourself a little break and to give yourself that precious feeling of um let me just say precious feeling. Yeah, just give me a second. So since it is the memorial for Fraser Dougherty today here at LTV, and I took the liberty to do a show now because I came an hour earlier. With your approval, and if you indulge me, I'll read the piece that I wrote for Fraser Dougherty. And um, let's see. Yeah, okay. This is for Fraser Dougherty, if you indulge me. Uh, oh boy. Okay. I think someone stole my glasses. Even though I can do it without glasses, but what the heck? Here we go. Okay. Headphones, glasses. Oh my god, I feel like I'm in a snowstorm, but let's do it this way. Here we go. That's for Fraser, my man. Missing him a lot. Um, yes, your journey was one of grace over the glide, a kind path towards longevity. It resembled a ride meant for heroes, a swift, thorough, and uplifting life. The eloquence with which you lived, the helping hand you extended, the walls you erected, and the concepts you aided in implementing for public access all echoed your presence, akin to the pillar in rare kingdoms. You chose a path few dared to take. The hands of the clock, accurate and resolute, marked the years it took to craft the zone of comfort you established. You earn your an earnest plea for just enough oxygen to sustain the vessel of communication amidst the imminent shift of an election, allowing previously muted voices to transcend their limited range. You embedded enduring patterns that continue to shape the collective imagery of people to this day. You dedicated your complete self to bolstering the concept that evolved into a fixed image of common sense and creative decency, resilient, expressive, and witty, leading the crowd to the right destination. In this realm, the residents' Celine reverberated publicity. In this realm, the residents' Celine reverberated publicly, delivering its own version of democracy and freedom. It identified the benefits each time as the deserving relinquished themselves to aid the needy. You placed your trust in the system you believed in, attributing credit to its accurate implementers. So, I did my best. There's some things that can be improved and fixed and whatever, but uh, really, that, for example, that that which I read to you right now, I could have just said, Fraser, I love you because you were a great man, and because you were sitting here doing this particular show. By the way, you did this particular show since 1980, and I took it over in 1998. I think 18 years. He did it for like 2 hours in the morning, 7 to 9, and nothing affected his resolution, and nothing swayed him. He was a natural monster, a power to be reckoned with, and an animal if needs be, facing the town hall day in and day out, every time, speaking its piece on his show, on his morning show every morning, to those who were listening, to those who were not listening, to those who wanted to listen, to those who didn't want to listen. He just borrowed these powers from destinations that were not even familiar to him. Any which way he could have done that. There were no limits. There were no limits to the extent of his willingness to devote himself, to donate his energy. Speaking of energy, man, this guy halfway through already used all the reservoirs of his energy, and he was running on empty for another 20 years. But it goes to show you, he lived to be 102. And then you said to yourself, must have done something right. I used to have breakfasts with him. His breath, his breakfast was like 5 cups of black coffee, no sugar, black, 5 cups, 2 poached eggs in a cup with 2 squares of butter, 3 pieces of crispy bacon. Then he had toasted rye with so much butter and jam that you won't even believe it. I mean, and this guy would mix the poached eggs with the butter, melting butter in it, and the bacon, and eat the toast. And and that stage, I think he was like 80 years old. Okay, and one day I remember I sat across from him and I said, if you keep on eating like this, you're gonna kill death. Death is gonna die because of you. don't, don't, don't ask me. But that's what came out of my mouth. And, and um, he was smiling. He never laughed. He laughed only when he was in distress and when he had to say, okay, you know what, I give you that much. It was funny. And one day I told him, I don't know what conversation we had. Well, actually, I know, but it doesn't matter. And I said, don't you realize you're shooting yourself in the foot? And he got so mad. And he looked at me. And I said, oh, am I in trouble? And he looked at me and he said, which foot? I said, oh my God, Hugh Fraser, that's his, that's him. So in that, okay. So me sitting here and so many other producers and so many other individuals and so much energy, so many aspirations, so much goodwill, so much coping with desires that and uh, to make them come to life, make it real by the thousands in a span of over 4 decades, is thanks to this one person with some followers with him that shared the vision and were really on top of it. It wasn't different. Never ever the following morning, it was nothing was different except that it was one more day that they managed to uh, you know, hold on to the achievements and be more resolute in the concept that they were promoting. And this concept you have to understand and believe and realize of public access stretches throughout the communities of the United States of America. This concept is a part of every neighborhood. Uh, some more, some less, but this concept cannot be denied because someone thinks that this is not right or people don't deserve it. People would have to alter the constitution and change things that they don't have a power to change in order to deny us a stage and a right to bring ourselves about to sit and say, good morning, I'm here, how are you, here are my thoughts, here's my guest, good morning, my guest, and asking how you doing, introduce yourself, tell us what's the relationship between this and that, and how do you just about to do this, what about concerning your contribution to our community, how is it that you, in which light do you hold that concept that you're so promoting, but on the other hand there's other things that roll in and they're giving answers and you ask questions and sometimes they doubt you and then you come back with a question that they say, whoa, look at this guy, he can speak, he can ask, he can question, he can this, and then you continue and then you say, oh, look, this guest is really intelligent, look what kind of an answer he gave me, and then you interact on the basis of humbling each other, you interact on the basis of being humbled by each other. I mean, this is what public access, and then multiply that by tens and hundreds of thousands of instances where this gathering is taking place and showing its face with extreme clarity. Extreme clarity. And if anything, can you imagine anything that will make it to be less than it really is? No, nothing can make it less than important as it may be, and nothing can reduce the positive tension intensity that it carries with just because we're doing or not doing something. It's just it carries its own weight by its own right, by its own level of devotion and achievements. Therefore, and so you're like let's say in the right place in the right time always. You enter an entity, an establishment of public access, you already know instantly that you're in the right place in the right time, and therefore always can never be different and otherwise, unless you're a complete mess, and unless you're insane or something, or unless you're unstable, unless you mean harm and evil or whatever. But obviously, but that's not the case. So going back to, in order to conclude, going back to that ladder that we're creating in order to reach some kind of coherence, and that coherence speaks a language that you don't need to acquire any special needs or expertise in order to be a part of the discussion. That discussion is handled and taking place vis-a-vis a language that is familiar to everyone. And it tells you if we speak in the name of democracy, okay, some people say, oh, who is he? What is he? Not again. What can he say about democracy? Probably nothing except that I'm practicing it live as I do now. Let's talk about freedom of speech. What is freedom of speech? What is the nature of the moment that you are grabbing it, and with a sense of privilege, and how lucky am I? How much goodness can be concentrated in one space in any given time? Like incredible. Freedom of speech is all about the extent of the speech from the early ancient times where people were muted. They were muted because they didn't have a voice to begin with. Voice wasn't even formed then. And even if it was formed, it was more like almost like borderline animals that are hungry, or maybe not, or aching, or in, inside the body with a brain that is not materialized yet. All the way from those ancient times through the now, and because we live in a now that tells us already about the future. So when you anchor in the now, you actually conquer the future by doing so. So if it's freedom of speech that you have in mind, you are an eternal winner, especially because you're given a stage and time and effort on behalf of the crowd to tell you and remind you and again remind you and again reiterate that you're within your rights and you're in the right place. And you're in the right place in the right time and the right time in the right place always. There's no it's no like, okay, today is Tuesday and because it's this date and that year, then you're not. Always. No exceptions at all. So I don't know if you are the person that can think like me and say, wait a second, this is beyond that which is beyond that which is within, that carries the beyond of that which is completely fortified constantly, ceaselessly, endlessly, and present and speak for the factors that tells you nothing but about the truth behind human decency. Did I make myself clear? I think I did. And let's kind of keep it short and tell you that we're going to be here tomorrow. As much as we were here yesterday, and as much as we're here this morning, Sunday morning, January 14th, year 2024, here with the Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi, and want to remind you also that we have monthly group art shows here at LTV. It's been for 26 years that I've been curating these shows. Of course, since the early days of Sabina Hindra, God bless her, she's wonderful, and she did and contributed to LTV to no end. We have Josh Dayton, Steve Lotion, and myself on display here throughout the months of January, and we got some really nice surprises for the months to come. And keep it in mind, and don't be a stranger. And we thank you. We know you're out there, and we appreciate all your efforts. God bless. Be happy.